Jack did not have nightmares often, but there was one night he will never forget. In the dream, he strolled into a dark alley with no one walking by and everything coated in a gloomy pitch black darkness. Suddenly, a figure appeared behind him. It was a bride. Her elegant face was hidden under a delicate chiffon veil. A pair of large, stocky hands grasped her hard and yanked her backwards. Everything occurred so quickly that she didn't have time to react. The girl stretched out her hand to Jack, begging for help. Jack was shocked and paused for a while. He couldn't move and he stood frozen in place and time, despite the girl's urgent screams for aid. Jack, giving in to his cowardice and weakness, did not move forward to save the bride, but instead turned around and fled. He calmed down after running out of the alley for a bit. He decided to return to find the girl on the ground. The image in front of his eyes was horrifying. She had a large knife plunged into her stomach and her white bridal gown was stained scarlet red. From a distance, Jack noticed that the woman resembled Lena, the general manager of the firm where Jack was working at. As the sun began to rise and shine on the high buildings, the alarm clock sounded loudly. The alarm clock destroyed Jack's fantasy, and he returned to reality. He exhaled a sigh of relief and counted himself fortunate that it had only been a terrifying nightmare. After taking a shower, Jack headed to work as normal, trying to keep his thoughts as relaxed as possible in preparation for an active working day. The subway was quite packed. The surrounding environment was extremely bustling, and it was extremely noisy sometimes. Jack was feeling a bit nervous, and he couldn't stop thinking about the awful nightmare he had last night, which might be linked to what happened to him a few days before. Last Friday, Jack worked until 8 p.m. because the general manager was dissatisfied with his plan and required him to rework it. Jack was weary after a long day of work, so he immediately exited the train and headed home. Suddenly, a call for help came from a small alley not far ahead, and it was so distinct that he was frightened and looked ahead at what's to come. Jack took a few fast strides and quickly arrived at the alley's entrance. Jack could identify the lady in front of him as the general manager of his firm, Lena, based on the knee-length pencil dress he saw every day and the woman's high heels. At first looks, the people surrounding her didn't appear to be decent people, and Jack faintly heard someone say, "Give us your money," or "Hand it over now." The general manager, who controlled an entire firm that was highly rigorous at work, now had no power, and Lena's entire body shivered with dread. Lena felt relieved with Jack's presence when she happened to see Jack walking by at chance. She grabbed the opportunity, urgently pleading for Jack's assistance. The goons who had been following Lena's finger direction noticed Jack standing at the alley's entrance. The blonde guy, on the other hand, directly challenged Jack, saying, "Boy, do you want to be a hero and save the beauty?" At that time, Jack was unsure whether he should intervene and save Lena. But in the end, Jack remembered being chastised by Lena not long before, so he opted to disregard her cries for help by ignoring the situation. When Jack returned to reality, he couldn't help but shudder. He hadn't expected to be so upset with the manager that he would be so hesitant about situations concerning life and death. Jack arrived at the firm bewildered and filled with a lot of confusing ideas in his heart. When he initially arrived at the firm, he saw that something was amiss. Several employees were muttering and chatting around him as if something horrible had happened. When he sat down to work, Trio, who was seated right next to him, rushed over to alert Jack that something significant had occurred. Jack was perplexed and inquired of his colleague as to what had occurred. Lena, the company's general manager, has passed away, according to a co-worker. When he heard it, Jack became petrified and pretended he didn't know anything about it. Lena was robbed and murdered in an alley near the firm, according to a colleague. Then Jack's co-worker groaned in sorrow, not expecting Lena to have had such a short life when she was about to get married soon. Throughout the day, people at Jack's office talked about Lena's death. Jack did not dare to tell anybody about what occurred last Friday. Instead, he turned on his computer and sat in front of it. He was no longer in the mood to work. He had no idea that a routine heist would evolve into a murder investigation because he opted not to save her. Jack was exceedingly sluggish after leaving work. He arrived home with an unkempt appearance and little vigor left. He believed his previous nightmare was intended for him. After sitting on the chair for some time and pondering, Jack went into a deep slumber while he was leaning on the sofa. In Jack's dream, the woman in the white bridal gown reappeared, this time standing at the end of that desolate lane. This time, Jack could clearly see the woman's face. It was Lena, and her expression was frightening. Jack wanted to run away, but the woman came closer to him. Suddenly, she was behind him. She screamed as she gripped Jack's neck with her bloodied hands. "Why did you abandon me? Why didn't you save me?" Jack desperately tried to flee, but his efforts were futile as the gory hands clamped around his neck. He couldn't get her hands off his neck. They were tearing at his flesh as it bled. Just as his life was hanging by a thread, Jack awoke. He restored his strength and gulped for air. Fortunately, he returned to reality, escaping from the awful dream. When Jack looked more carefully around him, he noticed that he was holding a knife with a lot of blood smears on it. His clothes were totally stained with blood and he had no idea what was going on. Jack ran to the mirror and noticed that his neck had a large cut on it. Thankfully, he didn't have a ruptured artery. Otherwise, this cut would have taken his life. Jack has recognized the gravity of the situation, but he was also to blame for Lena's death. The next day, instead of going to work, Jack went to the temple to worship. At night, Jack purchased some joss papers and traveled to the location of Lena's murder to burn some for her. While burning, Jack was saying something to her, begging and pleading with her to forgive him and leave him alone. Jack couldn't hold back his tears and expressed sorrow while speaking. At the same time, Jack became aware of the presence of someone behind him. Turning his head, he recognized the guy with the blonde hair who had helped murder Lena. He appeared terrified, glancing around as though he was being pursued by someone. Then he informed Jack that he had been hiding for the last few days, only daring to venture out at night. He abruptly pulled out a bright folding knife and approached Jack cautiously. Jack, of course, wouldn't remain there to wait and die. Instead, he swiftly turned around and attempted to flee as fast as he could. He chased after Jack in order to stab him multiple times within a short distance, and eventually a direct strike on the side made blood spray. Jack felt a searing pain in his back and his legs started to weaken. He took a few more feet before collapsing on the ground. Jack never imagined waking up, opening his eyes to see everything around him in such detail. The doctor informed Jack that luckily a few sports school students walked through that alley after school and noticed him. When the killer's conduct was uncovered, he fled immediately. Otherwise, Jack might not have survived. Those students were all martial artists, and of course they were too powerful for the killer. They utterly punished him with a few strikes. The police soon confirmed that this guy was the one who murdered the manager Lena a few days ago, and he was presently being held in a jail as the investigation and clarification of the case continues. When Jack heard the doctor's remarks, he wouldn't say anything since his heart was filled with so many conflicting feelings. Jack was discharged from the hospital about 2 months after. The knife the guy used to stab him did the damage to his spinal nerves. Even if he cured Jack, he would not be able to work for a long time. As a result, Jack finally had to quit his job and return to his hometown.